Joining us now on BYU Sports Nation is a man who will call the real game for BYU basketball coming up. We just don't know who it's against at this point or where it will be, but I feel like because of what BYU basketball did, Greg Wrubell, against St. Mary's, they may have earned their way into a home NIT spot. What do you think about that?
Well, I think last year some might have been surprised BYU got as high as a 3 seed, and yet they did. And their last 3 NIT appearances, all relatively recently, they've all been home games in the first round. And if I'm not mistaken, the NIT takes all the gate from wherever the games are played.
Cha-ching!
And BYU does good with the gate. And so, and nothing wrong with that. If you're a program with some good history and great fan support and show well in the NIT, and the NIT looks favorably upon you for that, well, so be it. You've earned that. So I won't be surprised this year if they get a home game because they've got a good NIT history, and they've got 24 wins, and they're coming off a nice win over a top 20 team last week, so why not?
You know, speaking of surprised, I will be surprised. Well, I think I know the way you're going to answer this. What has your attention right now? Is it basketball with the NIT, or is it spring practices that are going on?
It's definitely basketball.
I was not surprised.
Because we talk about practice.
Yeah, man.
Not a game. We talk about practice. So spring football is in practice. We got games. And so, you always want to be in the NCAA. You never prefer the NIT to the NCAA. Never.
I hope Brian
ever,
Logan is listening.
Brian.
Brian. Can you hear this? Oh, I have
always want to be in the NCAA over the NIT. But if you end up in the NIT, you make the most of it and you get after it. And BYU's had some great NIT runs. And so, yeah, I'd rather be, David rather be, they'd all rather be in the field of 68. But if you are not, you get new life, you get new opponents, you get new approaches, you get a new fan base in the Marriott Center, different vibe, and you go win some games.
It's quality basketball. They're a good team.
And you can build off it. And again, the NIT fields now are better than they've ever been. And you just need to look at how these fields are composed now to see, again, the teams dropping off the NCAA bubble, those become your NIT teams. And you've got some good basketball teams, and you always have, but better teams even recently. So, again, that's not where you end up, where you want to end up, but if you're there, go make the most of it. And I think BYU's in a better spot maybe this year, no matter what their seed is. I think last year as the 3 seed, I think UTA was underseeded. That was a better than a 6. And BYU might have gotten maybe overseeded by 1 spot to be a 3.
Yeah.
That said, you take it because you get a home game. But I think last year shows just the kind of caliber you can get in the NIT, and UTA was a good example of it. So, I'm excited. I'm excited to see what ends up with BYU, where they get their marching orders for Sunday night.
Well, and to your point, for those that remember the last couple of long NIT runs that BYU's had, that was really fun. The energy around the program was great. The fans were into it. Like you said, I mean, the NIT field is better than it's ever been, and it's fun when your team makes that long run.
And when you get to those semifinals at Madison Square Garden, generally speaking, it's heavily. There are exceptions, but generally speaking, heavily it's a P5 composed group there, and inevitably, a lot of those teams that end up in the Final Four or the NIT semis are NCAAs the next year. A lot of teams take that step the next direction.
Greg Wrubell, the voice of the Cougars, with us on BYU Sports Nation. We are talking BYU basketball, specifically in March. And wouldn't you know, Sports Illustrated releases a new cover, and Jimmer Fredette pops up to a degree in it once again.
As part of the montage?
Yes, as part of the montage, right. We were discussing the greatest BYU-related Sports Illustrated covers. What tops the list for you?
Well, I think it starts and finishes with that one, the one you got right there. And that's, again, I've got one SI in my office upstairs, and that's the one.
Jimmer Fredette rising above the Zags.
What a great shot. I mean, first of all, the technical aspects of the photo itself are almost as great as Jimmer was in that postseason. What a great, looks like he's jumping 4 feet off the ground, you know. And look at the guy, the Zag there, number 3. It looks like he's just taking an uppercut, right? like Jimmer's just landed the knockout punch. By the way, do you know who that number 3 is?
I do not know who
that is. Dimitri Goodson, who is now a Green Bay Packer.
No kidding.
Cornerback. So it was after this season, the number 3, Dimitri Goodson, transferred from Gonzaga to Baylor, played 3 seasons as a corner at Baylor, and is now a corner for the Green Bay Packers. So, there's an NFL guy that Jimmer's shooting over right there. That was kind of a little trivial note for you.
Is he hanging out with Rob Daniel?
Why not? Yeah. So there it is, Dimitri Goodson. I love that shot. Oh. So many great things about it, including Steven Rogers calling for the ball in the opposite corner.
I do love that. Hey, I'm open.
Yep, you are.
This is going in.
Just in case this three doesn't work out for you, Jimmer, I have an option over here. Skip pass, corner. Yeah.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
So what were your takeaways before we get to the NIT? BYU had a nice little run in the WCC tournament. What were your takeaways from that run?
Just how well BYU played offensively to get those quarterfinal and semifinal wins. Their best scoring games of the calendar year were those 2 games. They never got to 85 in their league games, and they got to 85 in both those games against San Diego and St. Mary's. The San Diego win was important because of what had just happened, I think, 10 days prior. Was it 10? There was 2 weeks, I think, 2 weeks prior when they lost at Jenny Craig Pavilion. So handling that team, which had been playing good ball, really took Gonzaga to the wire in the final week, San Diego, that is. Now, they had some turmoil off the court, as we know, but that's a good basketball team that BYU had to play well to defeat since they just lost to them. So that was impressive in and of itself. But the St. Mary's win stands on its own on the merits. They'd lost 5 in a row to that team. Offensive machine. Let's not forget, that's the best shooting team in college basketball. And BYU outshot that team on that night. To me, that was the high point of the season was defeating St. Mary's in Las Vegas for so many reasons. It just kind of culminated or showed the culmination of Dave Rose's belief in that team for how resilient they'd been, how together they could be, and how well they played on that night. I just kind of felt against Gonzaga, 25, 30 minutes in, maybe a little bit on empty. So much expended to get to the finals, and Gonzaga is just so deep and just so good. And I will not be surprised if I'm filling out a bracket. I'll probably stick the Zags back in the title game again because I'm a WCC guy and because I think it's that good a team. They're just such a juggernaut right now, and so no shame in losing to Gonzaga. And I really think BYU maybe ran out of gas a little bit. They're not the deepest team right now, not a ton of scholarships deep right now, but very proud of the effort. I know Dave Rose was too. It's always tough to lose to the Zags in that setting, but again, I think getting there. And this isn't a moral victory thing. Those are actual victories they got to get to play Gonzaga.
St. Mary's.
So they really did earn that spot. And Gonzaga can do that to a lot of teams, a lot of good teams. And so not a lot of shame there.
They did it to St. Mary's and Moraga for crying out loud.
Just top to bottom, start to finish, took them out of the game.
Ran them out of the building.
Again, Gonzaga's won, 13, 14, 15 in a row right now. Again, I won't be surprised if they make a deep run, and another Final Four would not be out of the question.
All right, Greg, that is a perfect transition into today's A stat that matters.
So BYU, presuming they get into the NIT.
Which they will.
Okay, that'll make it 13 straight seasons, or every year of the Dave Rose era, in which BYU will have won 20-plus games and played in the NCAA or NIT. And I include both tournaments in there as the top 2 tournaments, if you will. There are only 4 other teams that will say or can say they have a streak as long as the streak BYU has right now at 12 years plus. So Kansas will be going for a 29th straight year, all of the with 20 win seasons and tournament appearances. Dukes will go to 23, Zags will go to 20, Carolina's going to go to 14, and BYU is going to go to 13.
How about that?
So that's it, all right? And people say, well, it can't be that hard to win 20 games in NIT. No. If it were that easy, there should be more than 5 teams on that list. So those are the 5. Now, Kansas has been all NCAAs. Dukes have been all NCAAs. Zags are all NCAAs. Carolina has 1 NIT thrown in there. And BYU will have 5 NITs among the 13. But the bottom line is 5 programs and only 5 can say they're going top 2 tournaments and 20-plus wins every year for 13-plus years. And again, some streaks are longer, but 13 is kind of the cutoff because that's where BYU is. So if it were that easy to do, more teams would be doing it. And you can look around for multiple examples of teams that just have dip years, really good programs. I'll just take this out of Dave Rose right now is 7th all-time on the career Division I active win percentage, right? Well, the guy who's 8th is Steve Prohm at Iowa State. Okay, his team just went 13-18 and will miss out after being in the NCAAs the last 5 or 6 years. So Prohm, great coach, great record, right behind Dave. Yeah, they dipped. They'll miss the postseason this year. They were 13-18. They're not going anywhere. It's hard to keep it going year after year after year, even in just getting to the NIT. A lot of good teams can't do it. And again, my ultimate rejoinder is if it were that easy to do, there should be more than 5 teams on that list. It's hard to do for 13 straight years, winning as consistently as Dave has done, and going to those top 2 tournaments every year.
Well, and you throw in the fact that Mark Few is aware of what Dave Rose has to juggle at BYU with rotating scholarships and players transferring and guys that they signed that'll play 4 years later.
And you applaud what Gonzaga has done on its own, but I do think that BYU coming into the WCC helped Gonzaga raise its game too. And again, credit to the Zags. I don't want to say this is all BYU's doing, but by BYU coming in, keep in mind, BYU had just gotten after Gonzaga pretty good in that NCAA tournament. That was a good Gonzaga team. That was kind of typical of Gonzaga teams of the day. The teams now are better than that Gonzaga team.
Golden age.
I think they've gotten a lot better, and I think BYU's helped Gonzaga to get better and kind of raise that bar in the West Coast Conference. But all credit to the Zags, but I do think that BYU kind of helped them a little bit, kind of take it up a notch.
What are you bringing today in terms of a cool thing about Canada?
Well, of course, BYU had its home opener yesterday at Miller Park, an 8-1 win over Nebraska Omaha, back to 500 on the year. Spring training is going on, opening day is coming up, so we are in baseball season. And today we honor the great Fergie Jenkins, the only Canadian in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Ferguson Jenkins, there he is, a 19-year Major League veteran. His best years probably with the Cubs, where he won the Cy Young in 1971. First Canadian to win the Cy Young Award as well, and the only Canadian in the Baseball Hall of Fame, the great Ferguson Jenkins, born in Chatham, Ontario.
Wow. I had no idea.
He was so good an athlete, he played for the Harlem Globetrotters in 3 off seasons.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, he's rivaling our friend from Gonzaga, right?
Yeah, multiple sport athlete. There you go. Yeah. So Fergie Jenkins. Again, there are. In fact, we may save a few more for other occurrences here. There have been other great Canadian major leaguers. Maybe we'll talk about some others in the future.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Fergie is the only Canadian in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, that's
and the first Cy Young Award winner.
He was successful with the Lovable Losers, and that shouldn't be overlooked as well.
There's one Canadian baseball player that I'm immediately thinking of. Well, I won't bring it up in case it's something down the road.
It'll be coming up. I'm pretty sure it's one of those guys. By the way, Fergie, one of only 4 Major League pitchers all time to have 3,000 plus strikeouts with fewer than 1,000 walks. So there you go.
And I bet he can sing the national anthem better than another Fergie.
Nicely done.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Great